The air in the conference room smelled like stale Keurig coffee and impending doom. It was 9 o'clock a.m. on a Friday, the kind of gray, drizzly morning in Virginia that makes the glass-walled offices of Atlas Ridge Systems look less like a tech innovation hub and more like a high-end aquarium for depressed fish. I was sitting in my usual spot, the one with the best view of the server room door, my spine aligned with the precision of a cryptographic hash function. I don't slouch, I don't fidget, and I certainly don't panic. But when Chad Wexler, our new vice president of digital synergy, a title that means absolutely nothing and costs the company 6 figures a year, walked in, I knew the guillotine was about to drop. Chad was 32 years old, wore suits that were too tight in the ankles, and had teeth so white they looked like a zoning violation. He had been here for 3 weeks. I had been here for 5 years. All right, team, let's pivot, Chad said, clapping his hands together. The sound echoed off the glass, sharp and hollow. We're streamlining, cutting the fat, optimizing the vertical. He looked directly at me. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the AC system and the distinct sound of 20 developers collectively holding their breath. Olivia, he said, offering a smile that didn't reach his eyes, a smile that suggested he had read a book on empathy once but didn't understand the plot. We've decided to move in a different direction regarding our data security. We're bringing the encryption management in-house to the general IT pool. Effective immediately, your services as lead consultant are no longer required. He didn't ask me to step into his office. He didn't offer a severance package conversation in private. He did it right there, in front of the junior devs I had trained, in front of the project managers I had saved from catastrophic data leaks a dozen times. It was a power move. It was a pissing contest, and Chad had just unzipped in the middle of a board meeting. I understand, I said. My voice was level, no tremors. I took a sip of my tea, Earl Grey hot, no sugar. Is there a transition plan for the encryption keys? Chad laughed. It was a wet, dismissive sound. Olivia, come on, we own the servers, we own the code, we own everything. Just pack your trash. We'll have IT reset your passwords by noon. Security will escort you out. You own the code, I repeated, tasting the words. They felt heavy like lead shot. Right, I stood up. I smoothed the front of my blazer. I didn't look at my team. If I looked at them, at the fear and confusion in their eyes, I might have actually felt something akin to sadness, and I didn't have time for sadness. I needed clarity. I walked back to my office, Chad trailing behind me like a bad smell, ensuring I didn't steal a stapler or, I don't know, a ergonomic mouse pad. He leaned against the doorframe while I put my personal items into a small cardboard box. My cactus. A framed photo of my dog, Buster. A spare tube of hand cream. No hard feelings, Liv, Chad said, shortening my name without permission. It's just business. You were expensive. Can get a kid out of college to do what you do for a third of the price. Cryptography isn't just about math, Chad, I said, picking up my ID badge. It's about trust and verification. I placed the ID badge on the center of my desk. Next to it, my workstation hummed. The screens were locked, displaying the standard Atlas Ridge screensaver, a slow-motion drone shot of a mountain range. Don't worry about the computer, Chad said, checking his Apple Watch. IT is wiping it anyway. Of course, I said. I looked at the badge one last time. It was a standard plastic card, but to me it was a key. Not just to the building, but to the intricate, invisible castle I had built over 5 years. A fortress of logic and algorithms that kept this company's data safe from the wolves of the dark web, and Chad just evicted the architect. By the way, if you enjoy stories about corporate idiots getting exactly what they deserve, go ahead and hit subscribe button. It helps the algorithm find more people who appreciate a good karmic smackdown. Okay, back to the carnage. I picked up my box. I didn't shut down the computer. I didn't log out. I left the system running, the network connection active, the heartbeat of the database thumping rhythmically in the background. Goodbye, Chad, I said. Good luck with the vertical. Yeah, he waved a hand, already typing on his phone. Have a nice life. I walked to the elevator. The security guard, old Mr. Henderson, looked confused as I handed him my guest pass, because technically, as a consultant, I was always a guest. Leaving early, Miss Olivia? He asked. Permanent vacation, Mr. Henderson, I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had cracked all morning. I walked out into the rain. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I got into my Volvo, placed the box on the passenger seat, and checked the time. 9:45 a.m. Chad thought he had fired an employee. He thought he had cut dead weight. He had no idea he had just severed the connection to the engine while the plane was at 30,000 feet. He said they owned the code. That was true. They did own the code. But he forgot the most important rule of data security, the one I had written into the very first paragraph of the vendor agreement 5 years ago. You can own the safe. But if you don't have the combination, it's just a heavy metal box. I drove home, the windshield wipers keeping time with my thoughts. Tick-tock, tick-tock, I wasn't unemployed. I was just waiting for the invoice to clear. To understand why Chad Wexler was currently walking around the office like a rooster who just discovered gravity, you have to understand the paperwork. Boring, I know. But in my line of work, the devil isn't in the details, the devil is in the addendums. 5 years ago, when Atlas Ridge was just a scrappy startup with more venture capital than common sense, they approached me to build their security infrastructure. They wanted to hire me as a W-2 employee. I declined. I've been in this industry long enough to know that employees are liabilities to be shed when the quarterly earnings dip. Vendors, on the other hand, are creditors, and creditors have rights. So, I signed on as Obsidian Data Solutions, LLC. That's me. I am Obsidian. The contract was standard mostly, except for the security services and key management clause on page 42. I sat at my kitchen island, the granite cool under my fingertips, and pulled the physical copy of the contract out of my fireproof safe. I smoothed the paper out. There it was, clause 14. B. Proprietary encryption management. The client, Atlas Ridge Systems, acknowledges that the core encryption environment, including but not limited to master keys, salt generators, and key vault architecture, is the intellectual property of the vendor, Obsidian Data Solutions, and is leased to the client. Upon termination of this agreement, the vendor retains exclusive rights to the key vault until such time as a migration of services is completed and verified. Translation for the non-lawyers: I built the lock, I own the key. They were renting the ability to open the door. Chad, in his infinite wisdom and haste to optimize, hadn't read page 42. He probably hadn't read page 1. He saw a high salary figure attached to my name and assumed I was just another line item to be slashed. He assumed that because the servers were physically located in their building, the control resided there too. Amateur mistake. I opened my laptop, my personal rig, a beast of a machine that I kept completely air-gapped from the corporate network until moments like this. I booted it up. The screen glowed with a comforting, dark terminal interface. I navigated to the command console for the key vault. The vault wasn't on their servers. It was hosted on a secure, third-party cloud infrastructure that I paid for, billed to my LLC. Atlas Ridge's servers called out to my vault every single time someone tried to open an encrypted email, access the customer database, or log into the HR portal. Ping, verification, access granted, ping, verification, access granted. It happened thousands of times a second. It was the heartbeat of the company. I typed in a command, check status active. The terminal cascaded with green text. The system was live. The connection was healthy. They were still using my keys. When Chad fired me, he triggered a clause called unauthorized termination of service. Essentially, by firing the vendor without a transition plan, he was defaulting on the lease. I didn't have to hack anything. I didn't have to inject a virus. I wasn't a criminal. I was a landlord whose tenant had just stopped paying rent and told me to get off the property. So, I did what any responsible landlord would do. I prepared to change the locks. I looked at the clock on my wall. 1:00 p.m. I had a fail-safe script sitting on the server. I called it the severance package. I had written it 3 years ago, late one night after a particularly grueling audit where the previous manager had tried to throw me under the bus for a mistake he made. The script was simple. It listened for a specific signal, or rather, the absence of one. Every Friday at 5:00 p.m., I manually renewed the security token for the coming week. It was a 5-second task I did from my phone. If the token wasn't renewed, well, I looked at the terminal. I could renew it now. I could be the bigger person. I could call Chad, explain his mistake, and help them transition the keys over the next 3 months like a professional. Then I remembered his laugh. You just pack your trash. I remembered the way he looked at my team, treating them like furniture. I remembered the 5 years of missed birthdays, the late nights patching zero-day vulnerabilities, the absolute silence of my social life, because I was too busy keeping their secrets safe. I closed the terminal window. I wasn't going to renew the token. Instead, I opened a new window and drafted a simple configuration update for the key vault. SET lockout time equals 17:00:00 EST set display message equals error 402 payment required. I hesitated. Payment required was too generic. Chad wouldn't understand. He needed clear instructions. I deleted the line. I typed a new one. Set display message equals consulting fee, $5 million contact vendor for keys. I hit enter. The command queued up, waiting for the clock to strike 5. The trap was set, the bait was taken. Now, all I had to do was wait for the snap. I went to the kitchen and made a sandwich, turkey and Swiss on rye. It tasted like justice. 4:58 p.m., I imagined the office. The Friday afternoon energy is usually a specific frequency, a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. People are closing out tickets, finalizing reports, sending those last per hour conversation emails so they can rush out to happy hour. Chad was probably in his office, feet up on the desk, maybe browsing LinkedIn for more buzzwords to terrorize the staff with on Monday. I sat on my sofa, my laptop open on the coffee table. The screen showed a real-time log of the API requests coming from Atlas Ridge. Request, success, request, success, request, success. The stream of data was a river, fast and continuous. 4:59 p.m. I took a sip of tea. My heartbeat was slow, steady. 60 beats per minute. The discipline of cryptography is patience. You don't force the math, you let the math resolve itself. 5 o'clock p.m. The timestamp on my terminal ticked over. Request, denied, request, denied, request, denied. The river stopped. Instantly. It didn't slow down, it hit a concrete wall. On my screen, the logs turned from a soothing green to a violent waterfall of red error messages. Error, key invalid error. Handshake failed error. Decryption impossible. I closed my eyes and let myself picture it. At Atlas Ridge, the first sign would have been subtle. An email refusing to send. A loading spinner on the dashboard that just kept spinning. Then the confusion. Hey, is the network down? I can't access the client file. Why is my screen flickering? Then the realization. The central dashboard. Massive 80-inch monitor in the main bullpen that displayed the company's real-time metrics would flicker. The charts, the graphs, the synergy metrics, all of it would vanish. In its place, a stark white background. And in the center, simple, unserifed black text, size 72 font. System lockout consulting fee outstanding. $5 million and 0 cents wire to Obsidian Data Solutions to release keys. I watched the connection attempts spike. 10,000 requests per second. 20,000. The system was panic flailing. Every application, every server, every automated bot was screaming for the keys, and the vault was silently whispering, no. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. A steady vibration against the mahogany of the table. I glanced at the caller ID. IT Support Desk 1. That would be Kevin, sweet kid. Knows how to restart a router. Doesn't know the difference between symmetric and asymmetric encryption. I let it go to voicemail. Then, a new number, Chad Wexler Mobile. I smiled. The panic had traveled up the org chart faster than I expected. Usually, middle management tries to hide the fire before calling the fire department. Chad must be staring at that screen right now. I picked up the phone, but I didn't answer. I just looked at his name. I could imagine him slamming his fist on the desk. I could imagine him yelling at Kevin. Fix it? What do you mean you can't fix it? Reboot the server. But you can't reboot a missing contract. I opened a new terminal window to check the encryption status of the database. The data at rest, the customer records, the financial history, the proprietary algorithms, was all encrypted with AES 256. Without the keys currently residing in my locked vault, that data was indistinguishable from random noise. It was digital static. Billions of dollars of intellectual property turned into garbage in 1 second. The phone stopped buzzing. Then it started again. Chad Wexler. I poured myself another cup of tea. The silence in my house was luxurious. I could hear the rain tapping against the window. It was a stark contrast to the cacophony I knew was erupting 5 miles away. I decided to check the server logs for specific user activity. User, C. Wexler attempting access to admin panel. Access denied. User, C. Wexler attempting access to admin panel. Access denied. User, C. Wexler attempting access to admin panel. Access denied. Insanity, I whispered to the empty room, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. He was trying to brute force a system designed to withstand nation-state attacks. Good luck, Chad. I navigated to my email client. A private one, not the corporate one I had lost access to. There was a new email. Subject, urgent, system error from C. Wexler at Atlas Ridgecom, sent from his iPhone. Evidently, since the email server was down, Olivia, something is wrong with the dashboard. It says we owe you money. This is a mistake. Fix it immediately or legal will be involved. This is sabotage. Chad, I didn't reply. Sabotage implies I broke something. I didn't break anything. I just took my property home with me. I marked the email as read and moved it to a folder I named Evidence. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across my living room. The red error logs continued to scroll, a digital fireplace warming the cold reality of their situation. They were in the dark, and I was the only one with a flashlight, but flashlights cost money. The weekend passed in a blur of ignored phone calls and peaceful gardening. By Monday morning, I had pruned my roses, remulched the flower beds, and ignored 47 calls from various Atlas Ridge numbers. Monday at 8 o'clock a.m., the dynamic shifted. The calls stopped coming from Chad. They started coming from the 202 area code, Washington, D.C., corporate legal. I sat in my home office, dressed in my silk pajamas, reviewing the logs. They had spent the entire weekend trying to bypass the encryption. Attempted restore from backup. Failed. Reason, backup integrity check requires encryption keys. That was the chef's kiss. I had configured the backups to be encrypted with the same key management system. You can't restore a locked file with a locked backup. It's like losing your car keys and trying to use a picture of your spare key to start the engine. At 9:15 a.m., a courier arrived. He looked nervous, clutching a thick envelope with the red urgent stripe that lawyers love so much. I signed for it. Inside was a cease and desist order, demanding I immediately surrender all access codes, passwords, and digital assets belonging to Atlas Ridge Systems, and threatening a lawsuit for cyber extortion, sabotage, and breach of contract. I laughed, a genuine belly laugh. They were still treating this like a hostage situation where I was the terrorist. They didn't understand they were the squatters. I scanned the document. Then I drafted a reply, not to the lawyers, but to the board of directors. I had their personal emails from the initial setup 5 years ago. To board of directors from Olivia Vance, owner, Obsidian Data Solutions LLC, subject, service interruption / outstanding invoice. Dear board members, I am in receipt of your legal correspondence. There seems to be a fundamental misunderstanding regarding the nature of the service interruption. On Friday, May 12th, the Vice President of Digital Synergy, Mr. Chad Wexler, terminated the service agreement with Obsidian Data Solutions, LLC, effective immediately. As per Clause 14b of our vendor contract, attached, the encryption infrastructure remains the intellectual property of the vendor. Upon termination without a transition period, the automated key leasing service was suspended. This is not ransomware. This is a lockout due to non-payment and contract termination. Figure displayed $5 million represents the emergency reinstatement and lifetime license fee as stipulated in the penalty subsection of the original agreement. I am not an employee, I am a vendor. You returned the rental car. You don't get to keep driving it. Regards, Olivia Vance. I hit send. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It wasn't legal. It was Marcus Thorne, the chairman of the board. I let it ring 3 times, then answered. This is Obsidian Data Solutions. Olivia. Marcus's voice was tight. Controlled. We need to talk, Mr. Thorne. I assume you received my email. I did. Look, there's been a miscommunication. Chad is new. He didn't understand the complexity of the arrangement. Ignorance of the contract is not a valid legal defense, Marcus. You know that. You signed the original agreement. We are bleeding here, Olivia, he said, his voice dropping a decibel. Clients can't log in. Can't process payments. Our stock is down 12% in pre-market trading. This is going to kill the company. That sounds like a management problem, I said, examining a hangnail. If you want the keys, you pay the fee. It's a simple transaction. $5 million is extortion. $5 million is the cost of the architecture I built, which you are currently using without a license, plus a premium for the inconvenience of being fired in front of my own team. Can't pay that, Marcus snapped. We'll see you into oblivion. You can try, I said, my voice hardening. But discovery will be fun. I have logs of Chad Wexler attempting to brute force the system all weekend. I have logs of the termination where he explicitly stated the company owns everything without verifying ownership. And most importantly, Marcus, court cases take months. Your encryption keys rotate automatically every 7 days. In exactly 4 days, current keys will expire completely. If the vault isn't reconnected by then, the data isn't just locked. It's gone, permanently. Mathematical entropy will eat your database. There was a long silence on the other end. 4 days, he whispered. Tick-tock, I said. I need to call a meeting, he said. I'll be here, I replied, waiting for the wire transfer. I hung up. I checked the logs again. They had stopped trying to hack the system. The access denied messages slowed to a trickle. He had finally realized that brute force doesn't work against math. Now, the internal cannibalism would begin. They would turn on each other. Chad would be the first course. By Tuesday, the silence from the company was replaced by a cacophony of rumors. I knew this because my personal phone was blowing up with texts from the dev team, the people Chad hadn't fired yet, but who were currently sitting in a dead office, unable to write a single line of code. Text from Sarah, senior dev. OMG Liv, Chad is sweating through his suit. He's screaming at the CTO. They're looking for physical backups in the basement. Text from Mike, sysadmin. Dude, legal just walked out with boxes of files. Chad is trying to say you planted a logic bomb. I told them it's just the key server. He fired me. Lol. I watched the texts roll in like ticker tape. It was the internal implosion I had predicted. The truth was finally coming out. Legal had done their due diligence. They had discovered the smoking gun, the migration project. 6 months ago, I had proposed a plan to migrate the key management in-house. I had written a detailed roadmap, outlined the costs, and offered to train a replacement. It was a sensible, safe transition plan. Chad had canceled that project in his first week. I pulled up the archived email from my personal backup. From Chad Wexler to Olivia Vance, subject. Project Alpha canceled. Olivia, I'm canceling the migration. It's a waste of resources. The current system works fine. We don't need to fix what isn't broken. Let's focus on UI/UX updates. He had literally put it in writing. He had chosen to keep the dependency on my LLC because he was too cheap to pay for the migration. And then he fired the LLC because he was too arrogant to understand the dependency. I printed that email. I scanned it. I kept it ready. Around noon, I found myself staring at a photo on my bookshelf. It was taken 3 years ago at the office Christmas party. I was wearing a ridiculous Santa hat, holding a glass of cheap champagne, laughing with the team. We had just survived a massive DDoS attack. We were tired, underpaid, but we were a unit. I touched the glass of the frame. I didn't hate the company. I loved the code. I loved the structure. I loved the elegance of the security I had built. It was a beautiful, invisible cathedral of mathematics, and they were letting a vandal smash the windows because they didn't want to pay the glazier. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect. It was about the fact that people like Chad view people like me as mechanics, interchangeable grease monkeys who tighten bolts. They don't understand that we are the engine. My reverie was interrupted by an email notification. Subject, invitation, emergency board meeting Zoom from Marcus Thorne Olivia. Please join us at 2:00 p.m. We want to settle this. Attached was a Zoom link. I considered declining. I held all the cards. I didn't need to attend their little meeting. But curiosity is a powerful drug, and frankly, I wanted to see Chad's face. I spent the next hour preparing. I didn't dress up. I wore a comfortable cashmere sweater. I set up my lighting so I looked angelic, or at least well-rested. I prepared my screen sharing. I lined up the logs, the contract, and the canceled email from Chad. I was ready to give my final presentation. At 1:55 p.m., I poured a fresh cup of tea. At 2:00 p.m., I clicked the link. The screen populated with the grim faces of the board of directors. Men and women in expensive suits, sitting in expensive rooms, looking like they had just swallowed a lemon. And there in the bottom right square was Chad. He looked terrible. His tie was loosened. His hair was a mess. His eyes were red. He looked like a man who had not slept since Friday. Miss Vance, Marcus said, his voice echoing slightly. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Marcus, I said, leaning back in my chair. Hello, everyone. I looked directly into the camera. Hello, Chad. Chad didn't speak. He just stared at his camera, his jaw tight. We need to resolve this lockout, Marcus said. The company is at a standstill. We are prepared to offer you a reinstatement of your contract with a 10% raise if you restore access immediately. I smiled. A 10% raise. It was almost cute. I think we're past the point of reinstatement, Marcus. I said softly. This isn't an employment negotiation. This is a vendor dispute. Olivia, please, said Linda, the CFO, be reasonable. You're holding the company hostage. I'm not holding anything, I corrected her. I'm protecting my intellectual property. And frankly, considering the gross negligence demonstrated by your management team, I'm not sure I trust Atlas Ridge as a client anymore. I shared my screen. The canceled email appeared for everyone to see. Chad, I said, my voice calm. Did you or did you not cancel the migration project that would have prevented this exact scenario? The board turned their eyes to Chad's square. He swallowed hard. I was trying to save budget. You thought cryptography was just a password, I finished for him. You thought you could fire the architect and keep the house. The silence on the call was heavy. It was the sound of a career dying in real time. This is irrelevant, Chad stammered. Finding his voice, she's malicious. She set a trap. She timed this for Friday afternoon. I didn't time anything, Chad, I replied, scrolling to the server logs on the shared screen. The system checks for valid contract token every Friday at 5:00 p.m. It's an automated process. You fired me at 9:00 a.m. You had 8 hours to ask about the keys. You had 8 hours to read the contract. You spent those 8 hours measuring the drapes in my office. I highlighted a specific log entry. 14:30 p.m. Friday user. See Wexler action. Delete user account. Oh Vance, you deleted my account before asking IT what my account controlled, I explained. You cut the rope yourself, Chad. I just watched you fall. Marcus cleared his throat. Okay, enough. We understand the technical context. The question is, how do we fix it? The fee is $5 million, I said. Wired to Obsidian Data Solutions. That's impossible, Linda, the CFO, interjected. We can't authorize a liquidity transfer of that size without a shareholder vote. It will take weeks. Then you'd better start writing manual receipts, I said, because in 3 days the keys rotate, and then the price goes from 5 million to infinite because the data will be unrecoverable. We can offer 1 million, Marcus countered, and a formal apology. No, I said, 2 million, and we fire Chad. I paused. I looked at Chad's square. He went pale. His eyes darted around his room as if looking for an exit. Chad's employment status is none of my business, I said coolly. Though I imagine his continued presence is expensive, but no. The price is 5 million. That covers the consulting fee, the breach of contract penalty, and the purchase of the key vault infrastructure. You're buying the system. I'm handing over the keys permanently. I walk away. You keep your data. This is robbery. Chad muttered. This is capitalism, I shot back. Supply and demand. I have the supply, you have the demand, and your demand is desperate. I stopped sharing my screen. I leaned into the camera. Here is the reality, I said, dropping the corporate persona for a second. You entrusted your entire digital existence to a system you didn't understand. You hired a man who treats technical expertise with contempt. Now you are paying the stupidity tax. It's steep, I know. It's cheaper than bankruptcy. The board members looked at each other, or rather, looked at their screens, checking their private chat channels. I could see them typing. The back channeling was furious. We need a recess, Marcus said, to discuss. You have 1 hour, I said. I have a yoga class at 4:00. I didn't have a yoga class. I hate yoga, but they didn't need to know that. 1 hour, Marcus agreed. The screen went black as they ended the call. I sat back and exhaled. My hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. It was the thrill of the bluff, except it wasn't a bluff. I really held the gun, and the gun was fully loaded with AES 256 bullets. I walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The sky was a bruised purple. They would pay. They had to. The alternative was explaining to their investors why they lost 5 years of data because they wanted to save a monthly retainer fee. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed, a text from Mike sysadmin. Dude, security just walked Chad out. He was crying, actually crying. I didn't smile, I didn't cheer. I just felt a cold sense of order being restored. The chaotic variable had been removed from the equation. Now I just needed the wire transfer. The hour passed. No call. I checked the logs. Suddenly, a massive spike in activity. Alert, database integrity warning alert. Forced write attempt, they were trying something stupid. They were trying to bypass the key vault and write directly to the database, hoping to override the encryption requirement. It was the digital equivalent of trying to hotwire a Tesla with a screwdriver. Don't do it, I whispered. Don't be idiots. Alert, data corruption detected in Sector 7G. Alert, data corruption detected in Sector 7H. He had managed to corrupt the live transaction table. By trying to force unencrypted data into an encrypted container, they were scrambling the existing records. I grabbed my phone. I didn't wait for them to call me. I called Marcus. Stop it, I said the moment he answered. Tell your IT team to stop the forced write commands. You are corrupting the database. If you keep this up, even the keys won't save you. We were just trying to restore functionality. Marcus sounded defeated. You're destroying the patient to cure the disease, I snapped. Stop, now. I heard him yelling instructions in the background. The log spikes settled down. Okay, Marcus said, breathless. Okay, it stopped. You broke the transaction table, I said, looking at the damage report. That's about 4 hours of data lost forever. But the core archive is still safe. For now. We can't pay $5 million, Olivia, Marcus pleaded. The optics, the shareholders. The optics of losing the entire database are worse, I said. What if? He hesitated. What if we offer you your job back, VP level, we fire the current CTO? You run the whole show, equity benefits, a corner office. I looked around my living room. I looked at my garden. I looked at the peace and quiet of my life without Chad, without the fluorescent lights, without the corporate jargon. I don't want to work for you, Marcus, I said honestly. Don't trust you. You let a man like Chad wreck my department in 3 weeks. That's a cultural failure, not a personnel one. I'm not fixing your culture. Then what? The money, wire it. I send the unlock command. I send you the admin codes for the key vault. You own it, you manage it, we never speak again. Fine, Marcus said. The word was heavy with resignation. Fine, send us the routing number. It's on the invoice I sent on Friday, I said, the one Chad deleted. I resent the invoice. Wire it, I said. As soon as the funds clear, the system unlocks. It will take a few hours to process, Marcus said. I'm not going anywhere, I replied. I hung up, it was done. They had folded. I sat there watching the screen. The red error messages were still scrolling, a constant reminder of the chaos I was controlling. I felt a strange sense of melancholy. I had built that system to be perfect, to be unbreakable, and today I had to use its perfection as a weapon. It felt like using a Stradivarius violin to bludgeon a burglar. Effective but tragic. But then I remembered the badge on my desk. Pack your trash? No, I wasn't the trash, I was the landfill manager, and they just paid the dumping fee. 5:45 p.m. My bank app chimed. A simple, cheerful notification sound that belied the magnitude of what had just happened. Coming wire transfer. $5 million in 0-cent source. Atlas Ridge Systems operating account. I stared at the number. $5 million. It was enough to retire. It was enough to start my own firm. It was enough to buy a small island and never look at a server rack again. But I had a job to finish. I opened the terminal. I typed in the master override sequence. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, the clicking sound rhythmic and satisfying. Initiate unlock sequence, auth key, redacted target, Atlas Ridge main. The terminal paused. Are you sure? Y/N, I typed Y, uploading key batch, verifying handshake, restoring access. On the second monitor, the waterfall of red error logs slowed, stopped. Then a single green line appeared. Status 200 OK, then another. Status 200 OK, status 200 OK. The heartbeat returned. The database began to breathe again. I imagined the scene at the office. The dashboard flickering back to life. The cheers, or maybe just the collective sigh of relief from the IT dungeon. I wasn't done yet. I compiled a digital packet. It contained the root admin credentials, the encryption schematics, and the source code for the key vault. I zipped it into a file named UOWNIT_NOWZIP. I emailed it to Marcus, Linda, and the IT distribution list. To Marcus Thorne, Linda G. Subject, deliverables and transfer of ownership funds received. Services restored. Attached are the keys to the kingdom. I have deleted my backdoor access. I have scrubbed my user credentials. The system is yours. I recommend you don't lose the password. Please consider this the final correspondence from Obsidian Data Solutions. Regards, Olivia. I hit send. Then, I did one last thing. I went to the server hosting my LLC's website. I updated the landing page. Where it used to list services and consultation booking, I replaced the text with a single line, currently unavailable for new clients. I closed the laptop. I sat in the silence of my home. It was over. The war was won. The enemy was vanquished. The treasure was secured. My phone buzzed again, linked in notification. Chad Wexler viewed your profile. I laughed. Of course he did. He was probably updating his resume, looking for someone to blame, trying to figure out how a simple IT vendor had just nuked his career from orbit. I blocked him. Then came 3 more requests. Marcus Thorne, Linda, 2 other board members. They wanted to connect, maybe to keep tabs on me, maybe to offer me a job in 6 months when the dust settled. I declined them all. I wasn't part of their network anymore. I was a ghost, a very wealthy ghost. 2 days later, I had to drive into the city to sign some final tax documents for the LLC, ironic, considering the influx of cash. My route took me past the glass monolith of Atlas Ridge Systems. I pulled into the Starbucks across the street. I sat in my car, sipping a tea, watching the building. I saw the security guard, Mr. Henderson, standing at the front desk. I saw people buzzing in and out. The machine was running. The ants were back to work. From the outside, nothing had changed. The glass was still shiny. The logo still looked expensive. But I knew the scar tissue that was forming inside. They would be paranoid now. They would triple-check every contract. They would look at every IT consultant with suspicion. Good, they should. A man walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box. He was wearing a suit that was too tight in the ankles. Chad. He stood on the curb, looking lost. He pulled out his phone, probably calling an Uber. No company car for him. I rolled down my window. The air was crisp. I could have honked. I could have waved. I could have shouted, "Pack your trash," but I didn't. That would be emotional. That would be messy, and I am precise. I simply put the car in gear and pulled away. He didn't see me. He was too busy looking at his phone, probably trying to delete his LinkedIn history. As I merged onto the highway, my phone chimed with a secure message notification. Signal app. It was from a contact I hadn't heard from in years. A recruiter for a private defense contractor in DC. Message, heard about the Atlas situation. Impressive lockout. We have a client who values rigorous ownership rights. They need an architect for a zero-trust environment. Double your previous rate. Interested? I smiled. In the corporate world, you're usually punished for being difficult. But in data security, you're paid for being dangerous. I tapped the microphone button to dictate a reply. I'm listening, send the specs. But tell them to read page 42 of the contract first. I hit send. I turned up the radio. The road ahead was open, the traffic was light, and my encryption keys were safely tucked away in the past. I drove home. I had a garden to tend to, and $5 million of fertilizer to buy. Competence truly speaks louder than any title. Real power doesn't always announce itself. Olivia proved that point by silently securing her value. When they dismissed her, she made sure they understood exactly what they'd lost. Always respect the quiet genius. Arrogance often blinds people to the true backbone of their operations. Some lessons are just expensive. Appreciate you all for sticking through this one. See you in the next story.